So thanks everyone for joining us this morning. We've got a very exciting panel here coming up on energy sector cybersecurity. We're very pleased to see so many of you joining us after the closing ceremony. And so I'm very pleased to bring to you today a really exquisite panel that brings experience from across regions in the dynamic field that energy sector cybersecurity is. My name is Anders Patterson. I'm Senior Energy Specialist with the World Bank. And today we will have a wide discussion around some of the cybersecurity challenges that we see in the sector. You may have heard during this week and in your previous work that when political leaders, when others bring up the risk that cybersecurity can bring, that cyber attacks can bring to society, electricity outages will be one of the first things that come up, maybe together with financial sector security. The grid is exposed more than ever in many countries due to increased digitization. With the energy transition, we are looking towards seeing many more actors entering on the grid. That is a good sign because we need more electricity generation coming from more renewable resources. But it means that the old days where you had a very command and control energy grid with a few actors, those days are increasingly over. We have many actors on the grid, meaning that we will need to have security procedures that follows that accordingly. And on the distribution side, we have millions of consumers that are providing their personal data to distribution companies. And again, we are seeing risks there that personal data can be leaked in various ways. So we will have a wide discussion, and I'm so pleased to have a great panel with me here on stage. And so we have Mr. Armanjon, who is Deputy Head of the Power Division at the Ministry of Energy in Tajikistan. Very pleased to have you. We have Mr. Prince Dafour, who is ICS and SCADA engineer at Ghana Grid Company. Thank you very much for joining us. We have Jamila Madao, who is joining us from USAID, and who is a lead in the cybersecurity team there. And then finally, we have Hagay Sahav, who is a consultant with an expert at the World Bank's digital team. So we will have a wide discussion. We will start with a few interventions from our panelists. And to new arrivals, please welcome and feel free to take a seat. But I'll start with you, Armanjon. The government of Tajikistan has a strong commitment to digitization, and you more recently took up also the work on cybersecurity for the energy sector. Could you share a few reflections on how it came to that and what you have been working on?
Thank you very much for introduction. I came from Tajikistan, and maybe some people that don't know where is located Tajikistan. Tajikistan is in Central Asia. We are border with China and Afghanistan, and it is a mountainous country. We are mostly producing electricity using hydropower stations. And it is my honor to be here today in this session. And for me, it is the first time in Africa, in Ghana. It is a very sweet place. I like it. And I want to share something about digitalizations, security, which kind of law and regulation is available in Tajikistan, in Central Asian countries. And do you know, these days, particularly in energy sector, we are trying to promote digitalization in the sector, and we are less thinking about security. This is actually the challenge we are facing, and I went through some law and documents and regulations which are available. As we are Tajikistan, between China and Russia, we are part of some international organizations, such as like Commonwealth of Independent States, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And based on this organization, there is some working groups or some councils, they are functioning and working on energy sector. For instance, the economic development strategy of the Commonwealth of Independent States for the period until 2030, based on Commonwealth of Independent States, has been approved. And in this development strategy is mentioned that the CIS member states will pay special attention to creating a favorable regulatory environment for the development of commercial activities within the framework of electronic digital formats operating in the CIS in terms of data transactions, the data transmission and storage, transactions in the digital environment, preventing fraud on the internet, cybersecurity, etc., as well as development of human resources, training in the field of digitalization, combating the risk of cyber threats. This is based on, we are part of CIS organizations, and as well as Tajikistan part of Collective Security Treaty Organizations, CSTO. And the member of this organization is Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. In 2014, representatives of this organization has signed a protocol in Moscow on cooperation in the fight against cybercrime. And the deputies from Parliament of Tajikistan stated that the document creates the basis for cooperation between the intelligence services of the participating countries in the exchange of information. As well as deputies from Parliament of Tajikistan approved a document that allows the exchange of information about internet users with the member countries of the Collective Security Treaty Organizations. At the same time, Republic of Tajikistan announced that it will establish a center for the fight against crime using information and cybercrime technologies. And if we look to crimes or criminal codes in Tajikistan, I was looking about some documents, what kind of document we can find out, because the cybersecurity topic is very new for us, and we are going to bring out some documents, and based on those to go ahead and to develop some strategies. The criminal code of the Republic of Tajikistan, such as it has many chapters and articles, it mentions that, for instance, one of chapters, it says crimes against information security. And as well as articles tells about illegal access to computer information, modification of computer information, computer sabotage, illegal acquisition of computer information. For there is a various penalties and punishment for violating these articles. And regarding laws, there is a law in Tajikistan talks about the law of Republic of Tajikistan on the right of access to information. This law is in the act. The legislation of the Republic of Tajikistan on the right of access to information is based on the Constitution of the Republic of Tajikistan and consists of this law, other normative legal acts of the Republic of Tajikistan, as well as international legal acts recognized by Tajikistan. And based on Shanghai Cooperation Organization, we are now going in energy sector, just writing a draft of strategy called Strategy for the Development of Energy Cooperation of the member states of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization until 2030. In this strategy, the development of energy cooperation among the SCO member states requires solving the following main tasks. I will give you one task which is related to energy security, is effective use of energy potential of the SCO member states to ensure sustainable regional development and ensure energy security. This is, I brought the law and regulation which are available in the, we can say, in regional and international level between Tajikistan and those international organizations. And I will take a few minutes to talk about, maybe I have time? Okay. And maybe, I'm so sorry, maybe somebody cannot understand my English and, okay, thank you. And regarding energy market, Tajikistan is located in Central Asia. And since 2009, energy sector of Tajikistan has been separated and work isolated. And recently, we are going to reconnect this regional market to connect energy system of Tajikistan to united energy system of Central Asia. And in this way, we will export electricity from Tajikistan to surrounding countries. As we have a hydropower stations, it means that for downstream countries, it is very important water during summer season. And we can accumulate water and will not generate electricity using hydropower stations in winter, and we'll keep water and then we'll distribute water for downstream countries during summer. And in this way, we make exchange of electricity, and the market is going to increase. We have the projects like Tutap, like Kasa. It is between Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Afghanistan, as well as we are going to export electricity to Pakistan, and in this way to Iran. And there is also a big company in Kazakhstan, Kigok, and we are always talking about that Kazakhstan company can be a main point for creating the market between Central Asia and Russia, as well as in south part of Asia. It is very good. We are actually working on it, and there is implementation of project is going in different aspects. And finally, I will say that recently World Bank Group and the team of Tel Aviv University, they visited Tajikistan. They did a survey and assessment of energy security in Tajikistan, in energy, particularly in energy sector. And it was very good assessment, and it was one of the main documents which nowadays is available on cybersecurity in Tajikistan. And this research team from World Bank and Tel Aviv University, they give a recommendation for Tajikistan, like 10 recommendations, what we have to do next 5 years. And they mentioned that the first action path focuses on the establishing cybersecurity governance and cyber risk management practice for the ministry and key power utility companies in energy sector in Tajikistan. And these recommendations say that we should identify and analyze cyber risk to energy sector, including risk of integration of SCADA and legacy ICS, inside and third-party risks, and prioritize this using cyber failure scenarios, as well as recommended develop a sectoral cyber resilience strategy to address existing and future risk of digitalization. Also establish cybersecurity government for both ICS and IT in the electricity sector, and clear cybersecurity roles and responsibility across the power companies. Also to integrate cybersecurity requirements in contrast with vendors and service providers. Also to estimate the cost of specific investment and operating costs required for ensuring energy sector cybersecurity and resilience. And commission a study on establishing a sectoral SOC. The second parallel action path focuses on practical measures to develop operational and technical capabilities and cyber capacity of power companies. It recommends design, procure, implement, and secure modern enterprise networking and identity and access management. Also recommend automating and managing core business process for improved performance and cybersecurity, as well as recommended provide cybersecurity executive education to top management in power companies. And lastly, provides cybersecurity skills development and training program for design roles across power companies. This recommendation has been given from World Bank team and Digital Development Research Team and Tel Aviv University Cyber Research Center. We deeply appreciate their assessment, and it is valuable for our company. And we are all together in ministry and power company thinking step by step to implement those and take in action all those recommendations and to improve energy sector based on cybersecurity and resilience capacity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amandon. So really some very important, I think, lessons for all of us to digest from this. And just to briefly summarize, you've laid out the legal frameworks that's guiding a lot of the work, also in regional cooperation. You've highlighted the importance of regional markets and Tajikistan's participation in regional energy markets. And I think it's one of the areas that we're seeing at the World Bank as a very important area across regions, really, that in order to create powerful energy markets where we can get as much as possible renewable energy around, we need to have trusted markets where everyone can feel cyber secure. And then lastly, also thanks for sharing the insights from the maturity assessment that you did. And we will hear more about that method and methodology from Hagai later. So I now wanted to turn to you, Prince. You are sitting at really at the eye of the storm in the grid company of Ghana, where you are the folks that are really seeing when cyber attacks are happening. You're also witnessing a rapidly transformative energy system. So I'd like to hear a little bit from you. What are you seeing on the emergence of distributed energy systems? What are you seeing in terms of setting cybersecurity standards? Please share some insights with us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So taking off from where Mr. Amejon said, because of digitalization and hyperconnectivity, we are now seeing more attacks on the grid than before. And why are we seeing these attacks? It's also because traditionally the grid was more air-gapped, not connected to the internet, and also more of open protocols. But now, due to digitalization, we are seeing more standard protocols connecting the SCADA to internet, connecting to other utilities. So this is increasing the attack surface. And we are also seeing more introduction of distributed energy resources now, which is also adding to the attack surface. And I must say that because traditionally the grid was not experiencing these attacks, the architecture was not designed with security in mind. It was more of redundancy. So once we opened up, the attackers also exploited these vulnerabilities. And we have to make sure the grid is resilient, as we're also transitioning into the renewable energy. Is also going to bring more, we are going to see more attacks because these distributed energy resources are located in remote locations without proper physical security. And before Stuxnet, we all thought that industrial control systems cannot be hacked. But Stuxnet has showed us that any intelligent device on a network can be hacked. Yeah, but we have to start talking about the security measures before it becomes wide-scale deployment. And there are also certain instances where we have the DRs connected to aggregators. That is, you can have 10, 20 DRs connected to one system, supplying a larger community. And those are usually the ones attackers want to target because then it has more big impact. And usually those aggregators also have connections, digital connections to the utilities central control system, and they can also cause an upstream attack. So we have to have policies, procurement standards, because these inverters sometimes have vulnerabilities, and we have to work with the suppliers to make sure that before we connect these DRs to the grid, there are not any inherent vulnerabilities. We may even want to do more of penetration tests and vulnerability assessment prior to connection to the grid, and also do more of regular assessment for these DRs. So there has to be policy in that direction, and regulators may also want to enforce that for the DRs. And another thing we're also seeing is more of supply chain attacks. In 2012, there was a report that says that there were more supply chain attacks than malware attacks, because once the attackers realize that you have put in a lot of security upstream and they are not able to get in, then they will look for other sources of entry. And usually they come through the supply chain, where we are getting our equipment, and when we are doing upgrades and dealing with vendors, they usually want to come through that side. So it's important we put in place procurement standards for supply chain to mitigate the risk of supply chain. We may want to collaborate more with supply chain vendors to do more of risk assessment, even before onboarding of the vendors. Make sure that the vendors we are dealing with are conforming to standards, ISO 27001. Make sure the vendors are training their people. So we have to work more with the vendors to limit these attacks we are seeing from the supply chain side. And also, we talked about sector-wide risk management. The electricity is an interconnected system. It's one ecosystem. The generation, transmission, distribution are coupled. Once there's an attack on the generation, if the transmission system is down, generation and distribution, they have no business. So we need to start looking at sector-wide risk management, not limit it to only the utilities, because if you are in an interconnected system, the risk of the weakest link is also your risk. So we need to have sector-wide, as I said. Maybe the Ministry of Energies will have to coordinate and make sure we are not doing siloed approach, but working in the ecosystem to manage the risk as a sector-wide issue, and forming of electricity ISACs, information sharing and analysis centers, so that we can share threat information, we can learn best practices from each other. And I also want to touch on the emergence of IoTs on the grid. We are seeing introduction of sensors in transformers, in power lines, trying to monitor the health of these devices. And we have to bear in mind that any connection to the grid is an attack surface that we are increasing. And we have to look at how best we can protect these IoTs and the wireless sensor communication of these sensors in the substations, making sure that they are very secured. And these IoTs also go through an internet gateway to a cloud platform. And we also have to make sure that attack doesn't come from that side to manipulate the sensors in these substations. So that's what I want to say about the emergence of DRs and IoTs and supply chain, supply chain standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prince. So really, really interesting insights, and also just a sign of how fast things are moving at the moment, right? When we talk about distributed energy resources, we are really talking about anything from rooftop solar, various solar plants financed by private industry. We are bringing so many more stakeholders into the energy ecosystem. And I think it was really interesting to hear also how you're emphasizing the vulnerabilities at aggregator level, right? When you bring together the distributed energy resources, the risks at center level, and then also your emphasis on how this needs to be dealt with at sector level, right? We are past the point where an individual utility can manage all of this. And we're at a point where either regulators need a lot more capacity, or they need to work with CERTs, with Ministry of Energy, etc. So we'll come back to some of these sector challenges also with Hakai's intervention. But before that, I want to introduce, have Jamila Amadeus share a little bit. Jamila is Senior Energy Advisor with USAID, and I want to share that it's just been a real privilege from the World Bank's energy program to work with Jamila and her team over the last year. We've come to the cybersecurity topic in the energy sector more recently, but it's been really, really exciting to hear and learn from the USA team over this past year, because you've done so many interesting things, and we're so thrilled to have you here. So Jamila, over to you.
Thank you. I want to thank you for organizing, for being one of the key organizers of this event, and I'm excited about the energy sector being included in this program, because energy sector is a high-risk critical infrastructure sector, and the impact of a cyber attack on the energy sector will have a multiplying effect on the economy. And as Prince was mentioning, the IT and OT components of the energy sector make it more complicated. And just to illustrate with some facts, in 2022, International Energy Agency reported that $64 billion were invested into the digitalization of the energy sector. And at the same time, cyber attacks increased 24% in the energy sector in the same year. And Drago's company, which does analysis of cyber attacks on an annual basis, they said that utilities are most concerned about, they do a ranking of the concerns. Supply chain was high, and another second kind of concern was integration of IT into the traditional OT spheres, because it's a challenge. It's not easy. As John mentioned, the markets expose us to larger participants from the private sector, because consumers want to generate their own electricity. The electrical vehicles, grid edge wants to be on the electrical grid. So how do we coordinate the use of electricity? How do we coordinate the data transfer? If traditionally, as you were saying, energy sector was, solid state of industry, now it's bidirectional. So electricity goes as from generators, now it's also going from consumers to the grid. So there's complications that need to be addressed through cybersecurity programs. So I want to tell you what we did. I started work in USAID in 2014, and when Ukraine attacks took place in 2015, we were already working with the regional group of Black Sea utilities and Black Sea regulators. And we brought this topic to the attention of both groups. And I have to say, the first meeting after the attacks was very stressful, because people realized this is happening and we're not prepared. And one of the challenges was, how do you start having a conversation on the topic? Utilities, they say, oh, the IT and OT are air gapped. We don't have any, connections. regulators were coming up with a plan saying, how do we actually approve these tariffs if they want to invest into the cybersecurity? So one of the questions was how to develop the common language. And one of the first documents that USAID partner NARUC, National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, developed was Cyber Manual for Regulators. How to ask questions from utilities to understand the real situation of cyber preparedness. Because utilities say, oh, we're prepared, we have everything under control. But regulators, they didn't even know the terminology to feel comfortable in this assurance. So I think one of the most important things that I think is to start conversations. And based on the work we did with the regulators and utilities, then we combined this group actually. We put them together in the same room, and that was also an interesting meeting where everybody was trying to figure out what's their role. You know, one of the challenges with the regulators was that they said, by law, we don't have authority to regulate cybersecurity. At that time, it was a new topic, and they said, we don't have legal authority because it's a civil law system and it has to be already prescribed. But then through the conversations, then it was agreed that even if the laws do not give you authority, you still have the right to ask as a regulator. So that's something that and regulations need to be developed with the cooperation and collaboration with utilities. So just wanted to say that we thought that the definition of the risk was a challenge also. Like, how do you define a risk? In addition to the bodies that are responsible. So we developed in 2020, we developed webinar series, 15 webinar series on the fundamentals of cybersecurity, best practices for digitalization, because everything starts with digitalization, right? When you start adding data and talking devices and software. And we received such a overwhelming support for these webinar series. It was also COVID. A lot of people were watching them. We actually reached 68 countries, 70 utilities, over 4,000 participants attended our webinar series, which I think indicated the level of interest. And we turned those webinar series materials. By the way, those webinars are still available online. You can watch them. We made them public through U.S. Energy Association's website. We turned them also into Electricity Sector Cybersecurity and Digitalization Handbook, which introduces the concepts in an easy-to-understand manner with the tools that are attached as annexes. We also, together with the partnership with the National Renewable Energy Laboratories of the Department of Energy, developed power sector cybersecurity building blocks, which address all the key components of cybersecurity in the energy sector, in the power sector, including governance, laws, regulations, procurement, threat intelligence, technical controls. And I would like to say that workforce development was one of the key blocks that we felt was critical to start any program. So through digital connectivity and cybersecurity partnership, we initiated 2 follow-on programs that were focused on the energy sector. First one was countering energy cybersecurity threats that was designed to help local utility partners to counter cyber attacks on critical infrastructure through creation of their action plans. And they would decide on the action plan. They would, as a utility, they would decide what topics to address in their action plan, whether it was cyber culture, cyber hygiene, whether it was ICS, risk analysis. And then we supported it also with the certifications. Yesterday, I really appreciated one of the speakers talking about the certifications, because the certifications, they also give confidence to the partner utility staff in saying, okay, I know what I'm doing, and this is how the best practices are to be implemented. The second program which we started was also a business innovation partnership, where we built on both cybersecurity webinars through additional webinars on digitalization, grid modernization, and energy management. So through this program, we started with utilities who wanted to introduce introduce new business processes and change management. And one of the utilities was Gridco from Ghana, so I'm glad to see you here, Prince. So yeah, this is what I would say, that the process is a spiral. You know, you start with the common terminology, understanding concepts, and then you go further in actual implementation of the programs. And through the process, I think we all learn the challenges, and I would say that all utilities have similar challenges. We bring usually into our programs through partnership with the U.S. Energy Association, utilities from other countries, and it's fascinating to see the conversations where the like-minded people talk about the challenges. So that's probably the description of what we've done, but if I may, I will plug the future plans. We also, as I mentioned, we're going into more complexity of the issues, and also to reflect on what Prince mentioned. Supply chain, third-party risk is a challenge. So in partnership with the World Bank, in collaboration, we're doing a webinar series on 10 webinar series on supply chain risk. And you're welcome to register online at the USEA website, US Energy Association's website, starting on Friday for the first webinar, which will be on December 14th. So welcome everybody online for this webinar.
Thank you very much, Jamila, and thanks for making that plug. So I think a great educational resource that will be available. We've had so many interesting talks these 2 days on the importance of workforce development and capacity building across sectors, and I'm very excited that the energy sector is, thanks to USAID in particular, is now a few years in actually in creating very valuable and webinars of really quite very high technical specificity and quality that covering many different areas. So we've had a really nice, well-rounded set of talks that really present what are some of the challenges and achievements in the sector, from policy regulation to regional markets to specific challenges for TSOs, transmission system operators on integration of distributed energy resources, etc. I now wanted to bring in Hagai because the World Bank's digital team has worked on a methodology to really look at sector-wide challenges and seeing how cybersecurity can be addressed there. So, Hagai, over to you. Please do share how did the digital team come across this, and please let us know a little bit more about it.
Sure. Oh, okay. Sure. Thank you. So first of all, I want to thank Amijan for the encouraging things you said about the actual assessment and methodology that we applied in Tajikistan. This is great, and it's great for us to hear, how this is being used by the government. This is, at the end of the day, what we are aiming at. So, if you think about cybersecurity, I think we're way beyond the need to convince people that cybersecurity is important, right? Everybody understand that. But still, there is a notion within sectors that cybersecurity is the business of the IT people. So you go and you ask, I don't know, energy or any other sector, they will say, yeah, cybersecurity, give it to the IT people, it's not my business. And I think the first driver for what we are doing at the World Bank, our sectoral approach, is to convince and to showcase the business case why cybersecurity is important for every sector. That was our first driver. And then, after you manage to convince, you need first to tell them, okay, to tell decision makers, so what do you need to do? And when they know what they need to do, then obviously, how do you do that? And what we are trying to do in the bank, we are trying to provide those tools, knowledge and toolkits to enable those decisions to be taken based on sound analysis. And what we did with the side of the assessment is that we developed, as you mentioned, with the help of the Tel Aviv University, based on their methodology, we developed a sectorial methodology for assessing cybersecurity maturity in a sector. But this is an holistic methodology, so we are not coming to the single utility and analyzing the level of maturity of this utility, but we're taking the sector, as a system, and we are examining the interdependencies between the different entities of the sector, the regulator, the actual entities, and also to the external entities that has some working relation with the sector, like the national entities, other sectorial entities, etc. And we are checking the relations between them, we are checking the interactions between them, in order to understand whether the sector is functioning as a sector. And what I think it's super interesting, and I hope innovative as well, is that we don't need to take a full sector as a sector, conventional sector that you have a ministry, a regulator, utilities, companies, etc., and just mark this as a sector. You can take whatever composition of a sector that you can think about. And I'll give you a few examples. So I think you mentioned about, maybe Prince, you mentioned about the transition to green energy. One of the countries we're working at the bank is now transitioning to green energy. So when we come to, in a way, we take a pen and we come to scope the sector, we are saying that the actual process of the transition from existing legacy systems to new renewable energy and the supporting system, this is the sector that we want to assess. When we're doing that, we give a lot of agility to the work that we are doing. I give you another, another example from the region, of Central Asia, and I think you mentioned that as well. So there is a project of energy transition from, I think, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan down to Pakistan, Afghanistan. It's called Kaza 1000, right? So you think about Kaza 1000. This is a cross-country energy project. We can take this project, we can take the secretariat of this multinational project, again, take a pen, circle around it, all the systems that are related to the corridor of this energy transition, and call this a sector. So this is the agility that the methodology, the SCMM, sectorial, I think I forgot to say the name, so the SCMM, Sectorial Cybersecurity Maturity Model, this is the name of the methodology. This is the agility that we are giving, and at the end of the day, if you go tomorrow to the supermarket of diagnostics, you will find many products. You can buy whatever type of diagnostic you want off the shelf. The problem is that we need to create something that is systemized, something that's structured the way we are assessing the sector. So tomorrow we'll be able to compare between existing assessment we did a year ago in Tajikistan and something we'll do next year or a few years ahead to see what's happened since. We can compare between the different, we can talk on the same language, same terminology. So what we are trying to do, and for that, again, it talks to the agility as well, our methodology is sector agnostic methodology. We can apply to every sector, but then just in a way insert the sectorial aspects of it. At the end of the day, this methodology creates not only gap analysis that that says that, okay, I mean the level of maturity is A, B, or C, but we're creating also actionable roadmap for the improvement of the cyber maturity of the sector. And listen to that, we are not looking for the ideal situation. So if you come to a country and you understand the capacities of the countries and what the country can achieve, we are not looking to achieve the ideal situation, but through negotiation and conversation with the government, we're trying to understand what is the desired level of maturity that they are looking for, and this is where are we aiming in order to be realistic and to be feasible. we are prioritizing, as you mentioned, we are prioritizing the list of activities and hoping that that will serve as direction of travel for the sector moving forward. In the last year and a half, I think, together with the team that is sitting here, we did 4 assessments in 4 different sectors: financial sector, cross-country in West Africa, health sector in Georgia, energy sector in Tajikistan, and the digital infrastructure or telecom sector in Sierra Leone. And specifically, we chose different sectors in different regions, in different level of maturity, and in different composition of the critical infrastructure, whether it's full public owned or a combination of public and private, etc., to have all type of assessments. And I think what we learned from this process, and I will end with that, maybe 3 main takeaways we learned from this process. One is, and again, you started with that, is government commitment. You cannot do that without the full commitment from the government, from the sector, from the decision makers in the sector to understand that cybersecurity is a problem. It's not an invisible problem, it's super visible for the actual functioning of their sector. And then this commitment, obviously, this is super important. Then the second one is demand driven. You need to listen to what is the need. And of course, then adjust and tailor and customize the work that we are doing to the needs of the government. And the last thing is that it is always, we are now here talking about capacity building, about development in the entire conference. I think the most important thing is to link the work that you do to actual development activities that the country needs. And that will make sure that at the end of this process, there will be a follow-up and an implementation of the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Hagai, and thanks for bringing this perspective also across sectors, right? Really important lessons from what digital has done together with us on energy in Tajikistan, and I think it ties a very nice bow on the topics that we've touched on. So I wanted to maybe offer one more question that relates to what the energy sector has to offer maybe for other sectors, and what some of the cross-sectoral sharing, what some of those components could be. Because I think one of the things that we experience as a particular topic that reemerge when we engage in various countries is that energy needs lots of expertise, both on OT and IT. You cannot get very far in securing a grid if you come in and you only tap the few digital sensors you have when maybe part of the grid is analog or not connected or running on 5 different systems. So having a deep understanding of OT while also bringing some of the best of IT, I think is a really interesting lesson, really interesting finding we've seen, which I think could very likely be relevant to other countries, like to other sectors like transportation, like water utilities, etc. But I want to maybe follow up on that sort of reflection, and maybe hear from you, Prince, and Jamila, if you have other reflections on what do we think that other sectors can benefit from our lessons from the last couple of years on cybersecurity and energy.
Okay, so I want to talk more about the framework, the cyber blocks. I think it cuts across all sectors. So it starts with talking of leadership buy-in. If you want to start a cybersecurity program, you need to have leadership support. Leadership must show commitment, because most of the time, cybersecurity is just in the books. It's just a risk and it's left. But they have to show commitment, form teams, task the teams to do assessments, and out of the assessments, you form your policies, and you also taking into account regulatory concerns from your sector, and then also out of that assessment, you have to do your controls. So your assessment is basically listing all your assets, mapping all your data flows, and then listing all the vulnerabilities in your assets, looking at your threat intelligence, the threat in your landscape, coming out with a risk, and then prioritizing your risk. And then, so in our case, we use the cybersecurity framework, So after the identify will help you to get your risk and prioritize them. And then you go into putting protective mechanisms on how to mitigate the risks you found during your assessment. And this will usually be more of technical controls, having a defensible architecture. That is the key word, because the defensible architecture is the backbone of the security. You have to have north-south defense, layered architecture, security in depth, and also have to have east-west control. East-west control means on the same level, you zone your systems and let them talk through firewalls. Typical example, if you are on a certain level and you have production and training as different zones, you might not want to allow production to access training accessing production on that level, because there are instances where attackers gain access to the training and then laterally they gain access to your production systems. So that is more of east-west control and system hardening and multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is very important, because if you read all the white papers on the attacks on ICS, you realize that it comes from the internet. A human staff clicks on a phishing link, attracts a malware to the office computers. The malware does credential harvesting, picks some people's credentials, and is able to log into the industrial control system. And is successful because of the lack of multi-factor authentication. So at the protect side, you have to get the architecture right, and you also have to train your people, and then also put in detection mechanisms. Because in the 2015 Ukraine attack, the malware was on their system for 6 months without being noticed. So it's not enough to have antivirus, because these malwares are able to evade antivirus. So after you protect, you need to have detection mechanisms to detect anomalous behavior. And then also you have to form incident response teams to plan for an incident, because no matter how you defend yourself, there's a likelihood that you still be attacked. And then you also have your disaster recovery plans. And then also you deal with supply chain risk. So if you follow all these steps, training is also very important. Once you train your people, 50% of your problem is solved. So it's also very important. So if you follow all this, you manage your partners and your supply chain, I think you will have, and all this should be ongoing. It shouldn't be a one-time thing. It should be continuously reviewing your risk and continuously protecting yourself. Okay.
Thanks very much. Camila?
Yeah, I think you covered everything. I just would say that what we find through our program, Lesson Learned, is because we operate with legacy systems that exist for decades, they already so old. Very often utilities don't know what assets they have. They don't know what assets talk to which assets, where this communication goes, where the sources and where the end of that line. So I think asset inventory, asset management, and vulnerability mapping and monitoring are the first step, I would say, for utilities and industrial control systems in general. I think it's applicable not only to energy, but to other companies as well in the utility sector that have OT legacy systems. So That would be one addition, I would say, to what Prince said. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Jamila. Yeah, asset inventories are our friend, one of many. I maybe just want to bring one more topic into the discussion, and then we will need to wrap this session to keep on time with our organizers. But I wanted to just acknowledge that we've heard a lot about search during these last 2 days, and the energy system is highly regulated with a very set and established group of entities. We have regulators, we have utilities, etc. But maybe, Hagai, if you could just bring some very short reflections on what search may have to offer the energy sector in terms of cross-sectoral learning.
Okay, so I think that maybe I divide it very quickly into two. One is direct benefits and impacts, is the fact that when you talk to the people you know in the language that they know, so you are energy people and you talk to the energy entities, obviously this is much easier, to do the job, to do the work. And then there are unique challenges, whether it's, I think we discussed here, like legacy systems. I mean, then, utilities sometimes that are super stronger than the actual regulator, and they have their own capacities. So the fact that you can do that in your own language, this is something that will be able, at the end, you will be able to produce more product that you'll be able then to share with the national level or with other sectors. So I think this is indirect, is the fact that once you have a cert, it sends a message to the sector. It sends a message that there is management attention, and that at the end of the day, there is management attention, and that this is a topic to consider. I'll stop here.
Thanks very much, Hagai. So I think I'm glad we got that, tied that bow on search as well. So I wanted to acknowledge everyone on the panel. Thank you very much for providing all these insights. I think we came across a number of topics here, from the political high-level commitments, the regulatory, the pieces of getting regulations in place for the sector. I think we've touched on regional markets, which I think you will hear a lot more about in the future. As power markets become more interconnected across borders, we will need a lot more cross-country coordination on information sharing, incident reporting, etc., procedures. We touched about all the bottom-up stuff that really comes with the energy transition, and I think, Prince, you gave such a great overview of what does it mean in practice to sit at a utility where more and more distributed energy resources are coming onto the grid in really unprecedented pace. I want to emphasize that the energy systems in so many countries are going through more rapid change than ever before. And it all brings additional digitization and additional challenges. And Jamila, thanks so much for providing really the history of USAID's engagements, and also a chronology of everything that's been brought to the energy community in terms of workforce developments, in terms of knowledge sharing, where I really think the energy sector is in a very robust place where we have indeed a lot of building blocks. Yes, please.
I would just add to what we discussed. I think now that we're talking about industrial control system, when we make investments, we have to have cybersecurity as a part of that whole package. Because very often, investments take place, and cybersecurity sometimes becomes an afterthought. To avoid expensive cybersecurity additions later on, I would like to emphasize that investments into the ICS, which last 20 years at minimum, very often they last longer, need to be with the cybersecurity incorporated into them.
Yes, and that's definitely something that both we in energy and in digital at the World Bank are very focused on. The multilaterals have a huge responsibility in ensuring that large-scale investments in transmission infrastructure, etc., that is secure from the onset, not an afterthought, and that rather than having a little pocket of cybersecurity funding on the side, the biggest lever you have in investment, in infrastructure investment, is to secure that the equipment you procure are secure, that your standards are in place, and that all happens at the time of procurement. So I'm glad you emphasized that. So thanks everyone for this session. I also just want to acknowledge the World Bank's Cyber Multi-Donor Trust Fund for help bringing some of our people here. I want to thank them for the contributions they're making to the energy sector. We are able to run a number of collaborations with utilities and client countries across regions thanks to this trust fund, and also thanks to the Energy Sector Management Assistance Program, which is bringing energy sector resources to this. If you would like to discuss with any of us afterwards, if there are things we missed, please let us know. And thanks very much for joining us this morning.